Citizenship Amendment Act as it stands today is unconstitutional. However, I do believe that a compelling argument can be made that the Citizenship Amendment Act as it stands today is unconstitutional because of Article 14 of the Indian Constitution, which grants to every person, not merely every citizen, the right to equality and the equal protection of the laws within the territories of India. And there are 4 or 5 reasons really why one could argue that the Citizenship Amendment Act is unconstitutional because it violates the equality provisions of the Indian Constitution. I'm sure many of you have heard those arguments already. One of the arguments is that it excludes certain categories of religious groups. It excludes Jews. I'm not able to understand why Jews have been left out from the Citizenship Amendment Act. And on social media, when I posted a paper that I'd written, somebody said, well, Jews have Israel. Okay? But we have one of my very good friends is a Jew in Calcutta. Jews also have India. And if Jews have Israel, then Christians and Buddhists have their own countries too. We've included Christians and Buddhists, but we've left out Jews. That doesn't make sense to me. What about Baha'is? Baha'is have no country of their own. We've left out Baha'is. You've left out atheists, people who believe that there is no God. Blasphemy attracts the death penalty. It is blasphemous to say that there is no God. You've excluded people who don't know if there's a God or not. Agnostics, people who are doubtful about whether there's a God or not. You've left out categories of Muslims who may be considered minorities in countries like Pakistan and Bangladesh. Categories like Ahmadiyas or Hazares. So there are religious groups that have been excluded. And it's no answer to say that, well, religion is established in these countries, because I'd like to remind all of you today that there are other countries where religions are established. Has anyone heard of the United Kingdom? Where Christianity, through the Church of England, is the established religion. The Queen appoints the Archbishop of Canterbury. The senior bishops sit on the House of Lords. A senior member of the clergy crowns the Queen. So merely because a country has an established religion, what we would call a theocratic state, does not necessarily mean that it's unsecular. So that's no answer. You've left out other countries in India's neighborhood. What really perplexes me is, and this is something, one of the other reasons why one could argue that it's unconstitutional, is that the residence requirement in India is reduced by the Citizenship Amendment Act. So anyone else who wants to apply to be a citizen by naturalization has to reside in India for 11 years. But for somebody who falls within the Citizenship Amendment Act, the residence requirement is only 5 years. Now, what really perplexes me is that look how this applies to the group that we all know as Parsis. Parsis originally fled Iran. There are still Parsis who live in Iran under circumstances that one might consider to be very repressive. A Parsi who flees religious persecution in Iran and comes to India has to wait 11 years to be naturalized as a citizen. But a Parsi who flees religious persecution in Afghanistan has to wait in India for only 5 years to be a naturalized citizen. That doesn't make any sense to me. There are other reasons why one could argue that the Citizenship Amendment Act is unconstitutional. One is the cutoff date. The cutoff date is 31st December 2014. So if you suffer religious persecution before 31st December 2014, but you come to India on the 1st of January 2015, then you are not entitled to the protections of the Citizenship Amendment Act. Now look, I must point out that bright line rules are imposed by the law. For example, you can vote at the age of 18. So if I'm a day younger than 18 before the general elections, I'm not entitled to vote. Similarly, you are entitled to marry at a certain age, or entitled to drink alcohol at a certain age. The law does impose bright line rules. But here the bright line rule that has been imposed seems to undermine the ostensibly humanitarian objective of the law, which is that if you want to protect people who've been persecuted on account of their religion, then why close the doors on 31st December 2014? Apart from that, you've also excluded categories who suffer non-religious persecution. After the striking down of Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code, somebody who might want to come here because of their sexual identity is not given the benefit of the Citizenship Amendment Act. There may be racial reasons why somebody might be persecuted in a country in India's neighborhood. Those persons have been excluded from the Citizenship Amendment Act as well. But apart from that, There are some deeper problems with Indian citizenship law. It's not only the Citizenship Amendment Act, as Harsh was saying, and this goes back much before the enactment of the Citizenship Amendment Act. One of the problems, as Harsh identified, with Indian citizenship law is the fact that we've abandoned the notion of citizenship by birth. Really, prior to 1987, anybody born in this country, no matter who their parents were, was entitled to be a citizen by birth. If you're born after 1987 but before 2004, you have to establish that you were born here and that one of your parents is an Indian citizen. In other words, one of your parents was born here and the other could be an illegal alien, or you don't have to prove the citizenship of your other parent. After December 2004, you have to prove that you were born here, that one of your parents is an Indian citizen and the other is not an illegal alien. Now, this tends to operate very harshly against certain categories of people. Let me ask you this question. What if you're an orphan? You don't know who your parents are. You're an orphan born after 1987 or an orphan born after 2004. You have to prove that your parents are citizens and you don't even know who they are. What if you are a transgendered person, and very often in India, transgendered people are abandoned. Transgendered people are abandoned at birth. Again, you don't know who your parents are. How do you establish that your parents were Indian citizens? Apart from that, let me tell you about a category that in the US would be referred to as dreamers. Let's assume that you are actually an illegal, you know who your parents are. Your parents are both illegal Bangladeshi immigrants in India. They both came to India, they crossed the border illegally, they came and they settled down in Maharashtra, and you were born in Maharashtra. Now I ask you a question. Is it the fault of that child being born in India? Is being born a crime? Now that child did not come here illegally. That child has only known India as his or her homeland. Is it fair to now deport that person to a country that that person has never known, or to jail that person simply for the crime of being born in India? I'll only conclude with another example. Let me say that you're not born in India, that you came here along with your parents at the age of 2 or 3. Again, when you cross the border along with your illegal immigrant parents, it's not your fault that you came here, but the law tends to operate harshly against dreamers.